Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the English education system, because right now it's facing what you could only call a perfect storm. We're talking fewer students, shrinking budgets, and a growing number of kids with really complex needs. And this isn't just a story about numbers on a spreadsheet, it's about the future of a whole generation.
It all really starts with this one huge number, 400,000. Official forecasts suggest that's how many fewer pupils will be in England schools by 2030. And look, this isn't some far-off distant threat. It's a demographic tidal wave that's already hitting the system.
So you gotta ask, right? What happens when your entire system is funded based on headcount, and then that headcount just plummets? I mean, it's the fundamental challenge, the question that is keeping school leaders up at night. The whole model is a delicate balance, and when one side suddenly drops, the whole thing is at risk.
Okay, so let's dive into this core tension. Now, you might be thinking, fewer students, lower costs, right? Well, if only it were that simple. The reality is, it's a whole lot more complex, and for many schools, a lot more dire.
And here is the paradox at the very heart of the crisis. On one hand, less funding is coming in overall, but on the other hand, the actual costs of running a school, utilities, safeguarding, just maintaining the buildings, they don't fall at the same rate. In fact, they're rising. And the biggest piece of this puzzle, the cost and complexity of supporting students with special needs are going up and up. It's a perfect storm, and it's hitting schools in disadvantaged areas the absolute hardest.
This pressure is most acute, it is at a breaking point in one specific area, special educational needs and disabilities. You'll often hear it called SEND. And this is where that funding gap becomes a chasm, and the consequences for children are the most severe.
You want a concrete example of this crisis? Look no further than this number, 77. That's how many planned special school projects could be just scrapped as policy shifts. We're talking about 77 communities that were promised a lifeline, and now they could be left in the lurch.
So where's that money going? Well, it's being redirected. There's a new £3 billion investment aimed at creating specialist places, but within mainstream schools instead. The big question, though, is this a genuine solution, or is it just slapping a Band-Aid on a massive gaping wound?
And yeah, as you can imagine, this move is ringing alarm bells all over the sector. Leaders are really worried that this ignores all the evidence for specialist provision, especially when those special schools are already at a breaking point. As one special school leader put it, and this is a direct quote, "This announcement is literally favoring mainstream provision at the expense of special schools."
And all of this is happening against the backdrop of an estimated £14 billion black hole in council SEND deficits. Just let that number sink in for a second. £14 billion. It's a figure that's almost impossible to wrap your head around.
And here's the kicker. The government has warned councils that any future help to deal with these massive deficits will not be, and I quote, unlimited. I mean, this just perfectly illustrates the scale of the challenge, doesn't it? They're now reviewing the entire high needs funding formula for future years, so yeah, a lot of uncertainty.
Okay, so we've talked about the funding and the policy, but what does this all mean for the people on the front lines? The students trying to learn and the teachers trying to teach. Let's take a closer look at how this pressure is building.
Now, take a look at this. What's really interesting here is just how much higher absence rates are in secondary and special schools. We're talking almost 10% in secondary and nearly 15% in special schools. And what's more, these rates have actually risen compared to last year. It just makes you wonder, what does it say about a system when so many kids aren't showing up?
And behind those numbers, teachers are seeing the real-world impact of huge societal issues. I mean, homelessness for children in England has reached a historic high. More than half of teachers say they've worked with kids in temporary accommodation. And the impact is just devastating. 92% say these children show up to school exhausted. Huge majorities say it leads to poor exam performance and negatively impacts their mental health.
And the stress on staff? It's immense. The very nature of a teacher's job has shifted. It's no longer just about the hours spent planning and marking. The things driving their workload now are things like behavior management, safeguarding, chasing attendance, and dealing with all those unmet special educational needs. It's a totally different ballgame.
And if you thought it couldn't get any more complex, enter AI. Get this. AI-generated parental complaints are now a major source of stress for school leaders. Now, to be fair, some heads say it can be a tool for empowerment, helping parents who lack the confidence to voice their concerns. But wow, 61% of heads have noticed it, and they're getting these long, antagonizing complaints that cite multiple laws. It's a whole new frontier of challenges.
So, amid all these pressures, what does the path forward even look like? Let's take a look at what's happening in terms of new policy and innovation.
All right, so there are two big policy shifts on the horizon. First, the UK is set to reassociate with the Erasmus Plus program in 2027. That's a pretty big deal. It creates new opportunities for study and work abroad, especially for disadvantaged students. Second, there's a new strategy to tackle misogyny. It'll require all secondary schools to teach healthy relationships and provide specialist teacher training by 2029. So you've got one policy looking outward and another looking inward at school culture.
And just like we saw with those parental complaints, AI is a real double-edged sword right inside the classroom. The big debate really boils down to this. Is it a tool for progress, or is it a risk to how our kids learn?
You really have these competing visions. On one side, you've got tech giants like Google's DeepMind building a version of their Gemini chatbot for teachers trained on the national curriculum. But on the other side, you've got unions like the NEU warning that without teachers being deeply involved, AI risks just doubling down on the worst aspects of the current education system. They're worried it could lead to cognitive decline if it's not implemented very, very carefully.
And so that leaves us with this final, absolutely crucial question. With budgets this tight and needs rising this fast, can these new policies and this new technology really build a better future for education? Or are we facing systemic challenges that are just too profound to overcome with these initiatives alone?